If one cartoon dad could win an award for being the absolute worst role model to their kids, my money's on Stan Smith. While I'm sure the guy thinks he's a model citizen, he's actually guilty of numerous crazy crimes that are sure to earn him a whole lot of jail time. And I'm not talking about the time he got caught egging some poor soul's house.
Suck it! Guys, you don't need to run. The police are our friends.
I'm talking serious felonies, and the big-jawed miscreant is guilty of some totally insane offenses, which I'll be punishing by the real-life laws of Virginia. Do you have a favorite food you just can't live without? Well, if it's anything deep-fried, count yourself lucky you don't live in Langley Falls. The city council has banned the sale and consumption of trans fat, and the whole town is now forced to eat healthy. This is terrible news for a greedy pig like Stan, who just loves the taste of anything smothered in trans fat oil. And since he values his taste buds over his heart health and the law, he's willing to drive 15 miles to Chimdale to stock up on his precious T-fats and smuggle them back into Langley Falls. I love all the dramatic music. It's like he's smuggling heroin or something. As if going through that much effort doesn't already show that Stan has an unhealthy obsession with deep-fried food. He actually brings a greasy lunch of them to work and eats it right next to a toilet. Honestly relatable. He's in pure heaven, and when Bullock walks in to use the bathroom, he sounds like he's enjoying that meal a bit too much.
Oh, God, yes, I want you in my mouth.
A few days later, Stan buys some more T-fats. Smuggling the last stock was as easy as pie, but now police are searching cars at the city line. It's too risky for him, so he dumps all the oil and sends Steve to do his dirty work instead. What a caring father. The kid cycles all the way to Chimdale, probably burning every single calorie he's eaten that week, but gets stopped at the city line on the way home. The officer asks what's in the basket, and Steve replies that he's carrying sandwiches for the poor. The cop believes his story, but now wants to buy one of the sandwiches and returns to his car to get the money. Steve starts panicking, knowing that there's nowhere to hide the damning evidence, unless... After telling the officer that he's recycling empty cans of trans fat oil, Steve cycles home with the suspicious officer following him the whole way. He runs inside and tells his dad everything that went down, but collapses and gets taken to the hospital. This is why you don't chug like 10 cans of trans fat oil, kids. Steve is put in a medically induced coma for angina. And when he wakes up, Stan reveals that he was caught for smuggling trans fat oils and named and shamed in the newspaper. However, this smuggling dad would be getting jail time in real life. And as trans fats obviously aren't as serious as hardcore drugs, I'll assume the judge would give them the lowest possible penalty for smuggling, 12 months in jail. Everybody knows how greedy business owners can be. So when Selfish Stan started his own company, I definitely was not expecting his employees to get anything even remotely close to dental insurance and paid vacation time. Bullock has just announced some amazing news. No, the war in Iraq isn't over. It's something even better. The CIA is getting its very own ping pong table. Too fake of a laugh. Unfortunately for Stan, the table is going right where his desk is. That means his boss will have to relocate him somewhere else.
Just where to put you.
Your cover's been blown. Keep that. You're in Whatistan?
Bullock must hate Stan with a burning passion. Like, there's no way there wasn't room for his desk literally anywhere else in the entire CIA building. Angry at Bullock for forcing him to work in the same room people poop in, Stan decides to become his own boss and finally kickstart that celebration bear business he's always wanted to do. And being too cheap to pay minimum wage, Stan of course hires an illegal immigrant at $2 an hour to slave away making the bears, which become a smash hit.
My next holiday celebration.
I'll take 1,000 and another 1,000 to sell in my store.
Dude, am I crazy or is that Mrs. Puff? Like, that shriek sounded just like her on another one of SpongeBob's catastrophic boating exams. Anyway, one employee will never be able to fulfill all these new orders, so Stan needs to find a lot more illegal immigrants to underpay. Luckily, Paco has a whole bunch of relatives.
Ah, the sweet sound of illegals working for pennies on the dollar.
Pretty soon, Stan has over 100,000 orders for his celebrations, but his poor workers aren't going to get that colossal $3 pay rise until the next 10 years, and that's even if Stan keeps his word. But we'll never know, as agents from the INS soon swoop in on him. The idiots search the cupboards and under chairs for the illegal workers, and since they couldn't find them in those obvious places, the anonymous tip they received must have been bogus. Haley, the one who made the report, suggests that they check the basement, but when the agent opens the door, it's mysteriously empty. So what the hell happened to the sweatshop? That night, he attempts to relocate his workers to an abandoned CIA warehouse, but gets caught red-handed by the INS. However, he's able to convince them that the illegal immigrants are part of his son's band, and after the performance, he dumps them all in West Virginia. Stan may have gotten away with hiring illegal immigrants in the show, but if he was actually convicted, a judge would sentence him to 6 months per illegal worker. There were 13 employees working for Mr. Smith, so if my math checks out, that's 6.5 years. He'd also get slapped with a $40,000 fine. His employees would literally need to slave away for 833 days straight to earn that. You'd think being a CIA agent and all, Stan would have an endless amount of interesting stories to share with his wife. However, he thinks he's completely boring, and he almost killed Roger just to prevent Francine from realizing what a boring stick in the sand he is. Haley and Steve have just left for summer camp, and Francine is so happy to finally have a kid-free house for the first time in 18 years. But wait, there's someone else in the house that's more work than all the children in the neighborhood put together.
The madman we hide in the attic. He requires our constant attention.
I threw up in the shower, and it didn't go down the drain, and now the tub's overflowing, and I want some iced...
I just noticed Stan doesn't have a neck. Later that day, Francine tells Stan that she's teaching Roger how to be a self-sufficient individual so they can finally have their alone time. Stan worries that if Roger moves out, Francine will find out how boring he is and leave too. Klaus assures him that that could never happen, as Roger isn't capable of doing anything on his own. The two of them then erupt into laughter, unaware that Roger has been listening to their entire conversation. Seriously hurt, Roger takes a job at the pet store and moves into his own apartment ASAP, leaving Stan and Francine alone in the house without cable and nothing to do but talk and talk. He goes to Klaus for advice, and the fish tells him to just ask Roger to come back, but somehow Stan's sick, twisted mind interpreted that into this.
Ask him to come back.
I'll force him back. Poison Roger, and he'll be too sick to take care of himself.
What?
All I have to do is keep him weak and needy until the kids come back.
He grabs a can of rat poison, and after trapping Klaus in the freezer so he won't tattle, he invites Roger over for dinner. The alien foolishly drinks a red cup with a big black X on and instantly becomes too sick to go back home. He's recovered by the morning though and is soon back on his feet at work. Stan pays him a visit and hands him yet another sketchy looking cup with a huge X on it. Roger becomes just as sick as he was yesterday, but perseveres into the kitchen to make himself some iced tea. However, he accidentally ends up ingesting the rat poison Stan left in the cupboard and instantly falls to the floor. Francine screams and rushes to his aid, while the first thing Stan does is hide the rat poison. Roger is now in a coma, and just to avoid alone time with Francine, Stan rushes him to the CIA and hooks him up to a device that'll allow him to go into his brain and make him conscious again. What?
It worked. I'm in Roger's mind.
Hello, pretty bird.
Hey, I want to go to the gift shop in Roger's mind. I wonder if they sell plushies of that Steve, Haley, and Klaus hybrid. Actually, maybe I don't want that. After finding Klaus in the freezer, Francine arrives in Roger's mind to confront her selfish husband for not wanting to spend time with her. Stan chases her through Roger's Oreo, cigarette, and pill bottle-filled mind before finding his wife inside a big castle filled with the alien's memories. They find sleeping ugly, and Stan revives the princess with a steamy makeout session.
Doing?
Me? You're the one making a move. I was just napping on this pedestal in the perfect light.
We're in your brain to help you wake up and bring you home.
Home?
Stan and Francine invite Roger to come back and live with them again. He's so happy because his apartment didn't have a bathroom this whole time. Going inside an alien's brain is for sure the most non-boring thing a person can do. So when Stan is spending the next 10 years in the clink for poisoning Roger twice, he can definitely share that interesting story with his cellmate. Stan is too proud to accept help from anybody, and when he faced the biggest crisis of his life, he still wouldn't budge. The Smiths are having breakfast, and Stan becomes very angry after reading about all the money the Democrats are spending on social welfare. He thinks social programs are a complete waste of money and believes that nobody should ask for help. In fact, he's so vigilant in that belief that he won't even help his own daughter in this life-threatening situation.
She's choking! Dad, do something!
No, don't eat food you can't handle. Do not help her, Francine.
Later that day, Francine is caught driving under the influence and gets thrown in the slammer. She arrives back home the next morning and tells the family that the judge sentenced her to community service at a soup kitchen.
I went before the judge and she sentenced me to community service. So I'm working at a soup kitchen starting today.
No, it's wrong to feed starving people. It takes away their motivation.
The system works.
How can someone be this much of a jackass? There's no way he doesn't get up early and practice. Hopefully, Stan can just keep his wrong beliefs to himself and certainly won't march right down to the soup kitchen Francine's working at, insult the homeless people, and steal their only food.
Out of my way, bums. My dinner. This is my soup. You'll have to find something else to spill on the outermost of your 5 coats.
You probably all thought he was going to take that stolen soup home and at least share it with his family. No, I know you didn't, actually. I'm just saying that. He didn't. Instead, the jerk sits on a bench in a sketchy-looking area and selfishly slurps it all down himself. A random guy even comes over and offers Stan something that can treat the annoying cold he's been dying to get rid of. And let's just say, that substance isn't exactly Tylenol.
You're right, I feel great! Any chance I could get some of that cold medicine to go?
Sure thing.
Back home, he can't get enough of this cold medicine and is horrified when Roger reveals to him that it's actually crack. Disgusted with himself, Stan throws the remaining drugs down the toilet and calls it quits. He stays clean for a short while, but inevitably becomes a full-blown crackhead. After going missing for 3 days, Stan returns home and attends a dinner party with his family. Everybody already knew something strange was going on with him, but his weird behavior is only revealed to be crack-induced after he tries to perform intimate acts on the host in exchange for drug money. The Smiths stage an intervention, but as Stan doesn't believe in accepting help from anyone, he attempts to cure his addiction on his own. He barricades himself in the attic so he won't be tempted and gives Roger strict instructions to not open the door no matter what. Isn't that technically help?
Got it. You've got the room for as long as you need it. Good luck, friend. I forgot my comb.
I need crack!
You had one job, Roger. As he's already drained his family's savings and stole their TV, Stan resorts to robbing the neighbors, but police arrive at the scene before he can escape. The police order him to come outside with his hands up. However, this crack addict isn't going to rehab without a fight. He holds Greg and Terry at gunpoint and threatens to kill them, causing a hostage negotiator to be called. They arrive to defuse the situation, but instead of convincing Stan to do the right thing and accept defeat, they reward the criminal with a bag full of cash and a plane to Colombia so he can enjoy all the cheap drugs he wants. He rejoices upon landing in the majestic crack fields of South America and vows to live like a king for the rest of his days. If only he could see himself 2 weeks from now.
Can I have some crack? Just a little crack.
Give me your wallet.
Get off me. I'm not giving you my wallet.
Give it to me. Help me rob this white man.
You're asking for help. That's so pathetic. Ah, don't help him. It's a crutch. It'll make the kid weak.
He needed our help and he asked. There is no shame in that.
Seeing that kid get what he wanted after asking for help means Stan finally realized that accepting help doesn't make you weak. Having learned his lesson, he travels all the way back to Langley Falls in his underwear and tells Francine he's ready to get help, right after he smokes crack one last time. Just one last. Crack is a hardcore drug, so merely possessing it warrants a long 10 years in prison. Accompany that with theft of the homeless people's soup, criminal damage for jumping out of the homeless shelter's window, armed robbery of Greg and Terry, and evading arrest, and Stan's got himself a 22-year stay at the Langley Falls County Jail. It's basically his permanent home at this point. Is your love life feeling a little dull? Well, it can't be as bad as Francine's. She's been doing the exact same position with Stan since the day they got married. Stan has just made love to his wife and is feeling more proud than ever. I mean, just look at that banner. Francine, however, is fed up with doing the missionary position every time and wishes Stan would try something new for a change. The next morning, Stan spanks Steve for ruining his suit, and after the boy has run away clutching his Stan also spanks Francine to show her how hard he hit him.
Oh my.
What do you mean, oh my? It's supposed to hurt.
No, it does. It does.
What? I just swat his fanny, like this.
That can't be how hard you spank him.
Yeah, it is.
No way. Oh, I don't believe you.
If you couldn't already tell, Francine has unearthed her kink. And knowing how much of a prude Stan is, she'll have to trick him into fulfilling her secret desires. Later that day, Stan goes to spank Steve again, but Francine stops him and says that she'll be taking all their son's spankings on his behalf from now on, as they're a reflection of her poor parenting skills. She gets right to work, framing her own child for offenses like treading mud through the house, failing a test, even assaulting his father. Still not satisfied, Francine tries to get her worst spanking yet by throwing Steve's bike through the living room window, but comes clean after Stan catches her in the act. He doesn't take kindly to his wife's kink and calls her out on her sinful behavior by reading the non-existent Bible verse which commands all sexy spanking enthusiasts to hell.
That's not in the Bible. Let me see that.
Knocking out Francine with a Bible already constitutes domestic assault, but what Stan does next to her is not only insane, but like downright cruel in like every conceivable way. He unironically ties up and blindfolds his BDSM-loving wife, takes her deep into the woods, and abandons her there so she can purge her sick spanking fetish, cause that'll work. Back home, Roger puts on a musical to try to help Stan discover his own kink, and it works. Except now Stan is turned on by every kink imaginable. He fetches Francine, who's been left to fend for herself in the wild for 3 days, and when they return to the house, he wastes no time in working through his long list of kinks they should try.
Okay, the prairie dogs are up there, and they're hungry, like you requested.
Great.
Are you sure you're up to all this?
Francine, don't worry. If anything goes wrong, I have comprehensive butt insurance.
Principal Lewis, what are you doing here?
Being watched is one of my kinks, and who better to watch us have sex than our son's principal?
I really hope Steve is out of the house right now. He'd be scared out of his mind hearing what his parents and principal are about to do. Stan has the time of his life doing who knows what with those prairie dogs while strangers watch, but Francie's not into it at all. She tells Roger that her husband's totally out of control, and the alien decides to do something so unpleasant to Stan that it'll push him over the edge.
Okay if I jump in, Stan?
Yes, more!
Oh, that is not supposed to be.
I have no idea what just happened. But whatever Roger did must have been very painful, because the next scene cuts to Stan lying in the hospital. Francine apologizes to her husband and agrees to go back to their normal lovemaking routine. Their conversation is pretty calm, considering Roger is literally inside of Stan. He better get out of there soon, otherwise he'll be serving 26 years in jail with the ex-kinkster. Stan committed 3 disgusting crimes in that episode: domestic assault, reckless endangerment in the 2nd degree, and bestiality. That's 5 years for knocking Francine out with the Bible, 1 year for abandoning her in the woods, and 20 for loving animals way too much. And I just know those innocent prairie dogs will need therapy for the rest of their lives. While Stan's not exactly a psychopathic child-beating monster like Peter Griffin, he's not far off, especially when Steve's around. I mean, just feast your eyes on the totally not violent father stabbing his own son because he was jealous of his bowling talent. And also don't forget about the time Stan forcibly injected Steve with a syringe so he wouldn't have to deal with every parent's worst nightmare, puberty.
Stan, what did you do?
I had the boys at the lab give me enough serum to drop Steve off just on the other side of puberty.
Stan, we never discussed.
There he is, my man's awake.
Hey look, it's the old dude from Up. If you thought doing a Benjamin Button on Steve was bad, let me remind you of that time Stan forced his son to fight in a super realistic Vietnam War reenactment just so he'd suck a little less at singing the national anthem. While the kid wasn't physically hurt, he did end up with shell shock.
They're in the trees.
Steve, snap out of it.
Mr. Smith, can I speak to you in the hallway? Your son appears to be suffering from PTSD.
Both physical and mental abuse of a child are punishable by 10 years in jail. So that's 30 years we'll need to add to Stan's already skyrocketing sentence. I wonder if Steve ever got over his PTSD. Probably not. I can't imagine Stan ever paying for his son to go to therapy. I'm shocked that we're only halfway through the video and Stan's sentence is already almost a century long. And if you thought beating his wife and stabbing his kid was bad, brace yourself, because these next crimes are, I don't even got words for how nuts they are. Outside of Roger, Stan doesn't seem to have much of a friendship circle. Why isn't he popular? Well, if it's not because of his obnoxious personality or extremist views, it's probably because everyone in Langley Falls knows what he did to that one guy he befriended. After realizing he has nobody to hang out with, Stan prays to God for a friend. A guy called Brett Morris appears, and he's just as bigoted as Stan. The two hit it off straight away, even entering a dwarf tossing contest together. Of course those two jerks are the only contestants. Stan is having the most fun he's had in years, but it all comes crashing down once he finds out that Brett is an atheist. Dun dun dun. Fearing he won't have anyone to hang out with in heaven when he dies, Stan tries to make Brett accept God by destroying his life, and his attempts to force Christianity on him start off with a bang, literally.
Closer. Whoa!
Brett's homeowner's insurance doesn't cover explosions, but he'll still be able to raise the repair money with his breakfast joint. He now needs this more than ever. But Stan doesn't give a crap and is so insistent on destroying every aspect of his friend's life that he spikes the customer's food with bird flu and he gets the place shut down. He definitely deserved a slip. Losing the business he spent years building is awful, but at least he still has his wife and kids. They're the only part of his life Stan simply can't get rid of.
Brett, I've realized I'm a lesbian, so I'm leaving you and taking the children. That is so ignorant. You don't become a lesbian. It's not like someone shot an experimental beam into my head and suddenly I'm gay.
I mean, it could have been worse. Stan could have murdered them. I wouldn't put it past him. He really is that deranged. Now having no reason to live anymore, Brett immediately climbs to the top of the nearest skyscraper and jumps off. He miraculously survives and is taken to the hospital where Stan apologizes for ruining his life. Brett wakes up and isn't even mad because he's found God. Stan is ecstatic until Brett explains that the Lord kicked him down to hell and he's now dedicating his life to worshiping Satan. Even though Brett's in league with the devil, Stan is more evil than he could ever be. He obliterated Brett's house and caused an outbreak of avian flu, all to push his religious beliefs on him. 20 years is the minimum punishment for terrorism, and as Stan committed 2 attacks, we'll need to double that to 40. There's no denying Stan's the biggest bigot in Langley Falls. I mean, it'd be great if he could shut up and keep his beliefs to himself, but no, he's got to commit multiple felonies just to try and prove that he's right. It's Wednesday morning, and Stan is kicking off the day by raising the American flag and shooting an eagle. He waves good morning to his gay neighbors, Greg and Terry, and the couple have some very exciting news to share. They're planning a baby and are looking for a surrogate. Stan keeps up his phony friendly neighbor act, but as soon as he gets out of earshot, he rips into the gay couple for simply wanting to start a family.
I don't believe it. I let them be gay, and this is how they repay me. 2 men want to open up to each other and share a love more sweet and exquisite, but when they try to bring a child into it, I gotta put my foot down.
Francine gets angry at her husband for being so ignorant and says that she is proud of her neighbors. The following day, she takes a bag full of Steve and Haley's old baby clothes to show her support for Greg and Terry in this next chapter of their lives, and many months later, Stan finds out that she went a bit too overboard in her support for them.
A stomach!
Your doctor called. He said the baby you're carrying for 2 gay men is perfectly fine and you should be very excited.
Was Francine never planning on telling Stan she was pregnant, or was she just gonna let him think that she got fatter and fatter, then decided to get liposuction one day? Stan shouts at Francine for bringing on the downfall of society, and Haley yells at him to stop being selfish and start thinking about what's best for the baby. When the beautiful baby girl is born, Stan wastes no time in doing what he believes is best for her.
Stan, where's Stan?
Don't you worry, little girl. We're gonna find you a real home.
Stan calls Francine and tells her he's driving all the way to Nebraska, the state where gay couples have no rights, to put Liberty Bell, yes, he named the baby, up for adoption. He's almost at the state line, but the rainbow truckers are onto him. Stan puts his foot down, swerves onto a cornfield, and takes refuge at a farm. But when he meets the man of the house and discovers that they are in fact a woman, he decides to kidnap the lesbian couple's 2 children as well.
Let me see if I got this right. You kidnapped us from a loving home and are taking us to an orphanage.
Yes, your nightmare is over. It might take years, but maybe someday a straight family will adopt you.
I love how they're not even scared. They're just pissed at Stan for inconveniencing them. The 2 kids start fighting with each other in the back of the car, and Stan snaps at Haley and Steve to quit it. He's stunned to have mistaken the spawn of a gay couple as his own normal kids, if you can even call Stan's kids normal. He realizes that there must be nothing harmful about gay people raising kids and stops the car just before crossing the state line. Stan hands back the children to their distraught parent, expecting to be hugged and forgiven, but he only gets a punch in the face and an immediate restraining order. Sure, that punch may have hurt, but it's nowhere near as bad as spending the next 60 years of his life in jail for 3 counts of child abduction. Stan's a big, muscular douchebag with a jaw that puts Glenn Quagmire to shame. I sure as hell wouldn't want to bump into him on a bad day, or else I might end up like these guys.
Please stop! Salt while shouting anti-slurs.
You don't deserve to be on that cross, you lazy, wine-loving bisexual!
How come he's so quick to beat people up? Well, a short temper might be a defense mechanism he's developed after that humiliating traumatic experience he endured in season 1.
Let me show you the backyard. It's the perfect place for a baby to... Oh my God! Stop it! Stan, what are you doing? Leave my husband alone!
That bum's wife has to jump in and save him.
What a wuss!
Assault carries a maximum penalty of 20 years. That's 60 years for those 3 clips alone. And there's way more beatings I could have shown you, but this video would never end. If you've watched even a single episode of American Dad, you'll know that Stan's ego is the freaking size of Jupiter. It's so huge it makes his physique look scrawny, like Steve by comparison. And his overconfidence in his abilities has led to his family being put in some completely dire situations. See, the disastrous Hurricane Flozell has hit Langley Falls, and the seawall could break at any minute. Everyone in the neighborhood is already evacuated, but Stan promises his family that the house is seal-proof against water.
Well, I everything-proofed the house. Anthrax, radiation, water.
This dumb bastard's gonna get us all killed!
The family debates about whether they should trust Stan or evacuate. Francine, Steve, and Roger decide to leave, but it's too late. The wall has already been broken. The house is swept away by the flood, and Stan says that they should all go to the attic, as it's the safest place in the house. Only Jeff and Haley follow him, and Francine, Steve, and Roger remain downstairs in case a rescue team arrives. But nobody will need rescuing, as Stan has a genius idea that definitely won't drown everybody in the house.
Stan, what are you doing?
I'm dropping an anchor to stop us.
Oh, please don't do that.
Stupid Stan impulsively dumps an anchor he made with Roger's cocaine fridge, and right after he's bragged about saving the whole family, the house tips upside down. All power is cut off, and almost everything inside the home is destroyed, including Roger's lover.
I'll never forget you, Roger.
Just ignore her. No! My sweatshirt!
To be fair, she was annoying, and that was a super cozy sweatshirt. Meanwhile, in the attic, the place Stan hilariously claimed was the safest place to be, water quickly is seeping in, and the latch to get out is completely jammed. Francine, Roger, and Steve fashion a rope out of curtains and arrive just in time to save Stan, Haley, and Jeff from drowning. They all rush to climb back up the curtain rope, but it breaks. Everybody starts panicking, but rest assured, Stan will save everyone with another one of his Einstein-level ideas. Open the window and allow even more water into the house. No kidding, that's actually his idea. Well, duh. Didn't he almost just drown you 5 minutes ago? The family searches for Haley and find her severely wounded. Francine picks her up, and they all escape to the next floor before the shark strikes again. But the water is rising so rapidly that the shark's back on their level in just a few seconds. While hearing his family's screams of terror as they try to fend off the hungry shark, Stan mopes in the kitchen with a crushed ego. Klaus gives him a pep talk. The dummy is inspired to try to save his family one more time. And I guess there's no harm in that. Like, there's no way he could possibly make the situation any worse, right?
Okay, I let the bear in to kill the shark.
They're brothers in arms!
It's kind of impressive at this point. Definitely can't get any worse than that, all right? Surely Stan isn't that much of a screw-up.
I'm gonna electrocute him.
Oh, Stan, I don't think...
You knew where I was going with that the moment I said it, before I even said it, really. But hey, at least he wouldn't hurt anybody on purpose.
I'll get us through this. You have to let me help you.
Stan!
Francine shouts at Stan for making everything worse and orders him to go get help and not come up with any more reckless ideas, but there's absolutely no reasoning with this guy's ego.
I'll harpoon the bear, and the bear blood will distract the shark, and we can escape.
Even the bear knows that should warrant an immediate divorce. At this point, the rescue team shows up and tranquilizes the dangerous animals, including Stan, right in the nuts. The kind helpers turn the Smith's house the right way up, and despite Haley looking like she's knocking on death's door and Roger looking like he's practically cremated, Stan refuses to promise he'll sit back and do nothing if the family ends up in another crisis. He then heads outside to see how damaged the neighborhood is, and that flood really must have been intense because the Smiths now have a completely different set of neighbors.
What a day.
I don't even know where the hell I am.
Looter!
Self-defense! A black and a white talking as if it's normal. Everybody shut up and let me think. Just let me think.
Have you?
And that was the only working arm Francine had left. Can someone call a divorce attorney for this lady? Stan went through numerous dumb ideas during that episode, and that means he's guilty of a lot of crimes. First, we got reckless endangerment in the first degree for causing the house to tip upside down, thus risking the lives of everybody inside. That's 4 years in jail. And I'll add a second charge for setting a bear on his family. Stan would also receive 20 years for harpooning Francine with that javelin, 20 years for punching Jeff's lights out, and another 20 for burning Roger to a crisp. Add the attempted murder of his wife, and Stan serving 78 years in jail, all because of his ego. If you found out that somebody didn't like you, you'd probably feel a little sad. I know I do. But if your ego is as fragile as Stan Smith's, you may need a straitjacket and an army of psychiatrists to help you get over it. Inspectors will soon be coming to the CIA. Stan desperately wants to nab the autograph from God or the Margaret Thatcher robot, but the super high-tech surveillance device he gets is pretty cool too.
It's CIA-grade, highly illegal surveillance equipment. It's so sensitive you can hear a moth fart. Oh.
Later that day, Stan attends a neighborhood barbecue where he ruins all the fun for the kids by terrorizing them with his gun. Blissfully unaware of how much of a pain in the ass he was at the party, Stan returns home feeling proud of being so adored by his neighbors. He notices he left the surveillance equipment on and uses it to sneakily listen in on all the positive things the neighbors must be saying about him right now.
What's happening here? Somebody must like me.
What kind of an idiot points a loaded gun at a child?
I know, Johnny, but please, Mommy's almost there.
Carl Smith does his talk. He doesn't know how to listen. He's a pig-headed.
No, Nat.
Oh my God.
Crushed that everybody hates him, Stan decides to throw a lavish party that is sure to prove his haters wrong. When all the guests leave, Mr. Smith revels in becoming the most loved neighbor on Cherry Street, but he listens to that darn surveillance equipment again and learns that everybody still thinks he's a jerk. Stan will never let this go and is more determined than ever to make the neighborhood shower him with love and admiration. And how does he think he's gonna win them over? Well, by carousing down the street and sharing his wacky stories from his childhood.
Parents wouldn't let me have a fourth cupcake. I burned down their summer home. I framed my favorite grandfather.
If Stan's completely non-psycho and relatable stories didn't have people rushing to him with open arms, he tries to get the people's approval by doing them all a favor they clearly never asked for, because why the hell would anyone ever want this?
It's lead-based paint.
Stan must be really out to get these kids, man. Like, he's pointed his gun at them, he's destroyed their brain cells with lead, and now it looks like he's actually out for blood.
Happy birthday! Johnny fell in the pool, who is not afraid to risk life and limb for a neighbor in need. Unhand that child, underwater clown.
Accepting that he can't make his neighbors like him, Stan's ready to sell his home and move away, but when he discovers that Congress is letting the CIA seize any property that could help in the war on terror, he abandons his plans and chooses to do something even more petty.
Hey, what?
CIA, your house has been seized to help in the war on terror.
It's going to help a lot. There should be no more terror at all very soon.
Stan puts his feet up and gleefully watches his neighbors get wrongfully evicted from their own homes. The rest of the Smiths are shocked by his blatantly selfish behavior, but they'll have to vent in private because the lunatic is set on evicting literally anyone who criticizes him. Uh-oh, looks like they forgot about his CIA surveillance equipment.
You can't do this!
Oh, good. Criticize me more. That worked well the first time.
Stan eventually kind of learns his lesson, but where he's going, criticism is going to be the least of his concerns. Let me break down the crimes he committed in that episode alone. Public health endangerment for spraying lead paint everywhere, 10 years. Criminal property damage for dousing at least 15 homes on Cherry Street with pink paint, 75 years, that's 5 per house. Unlawful display of a firearm at the barbecue, 1 year. Disorderly conduct for disturbing everyone by driving down the street while speaking into a microphone, 1 year. Attempted murder for trying to drown that kid, 10 years. So that's 97 years in total, and definitive proof that Stan is the most petty criminal to ever exist ever. Stan's always locked and loaded with a gun on his person, so I was surprised that his kill count wasn't as high as other characters I've covered in the past. That don't mean they any less graphic. Remember that time Stan savagely killed an innocent Doug and Buster's waiter when he was supposed to be capturing Bin Laden?
Sorry, sir. We're closed for the night.
Or when Steve made a chick to clone and bone and Stan unalived her just so he wouldn't get fired by the CIA?
Honey!
Stan!
Don't judge me. It was just a clone.
And what about that episode when he caused Snot to die this slow, painful death?
I don't know what's going on here, Mr. Smith, but I'm gonna...
Once more. Again. And 2 more for good luck. And 1 for your mother.
The cold-blooded killer would be facing 3 murder charges for his psycho behavior, and as the minimum penalty is 40 years, that's a whopping 160 years we'll need to add to Stan's sentence. Overall, our burly CIA agent is facing a staggering 583 years and 6 months in jail. Stan might be the worst criminal in his own show, but how does he compare to other villains? Click the screen to find out what devilish crimes these characters are guilty of.